Hello guys and welcome to my channel with me stepping to the big stage with what other deck than Abyss Actors obviously. See, not only is this a channel for cheap puns but also for cheap decks, and starting off with one that's my favorite, it is the absolute best deck I've ever played, obviously not in a competitive environment, even though I feel like they've been quite boosted by the new support. But without further ado, let's start right into the deck profile. The first card, basically the new playmaker of the deck, Mellow Madonna, came out in the new set. I actually really like the effect. The kind of drawback is that you have a little bit of a problem with the card because it limits that you can only only summon monsters like Abyss Actor monsters for the rest of the turn, which can be quite annoying. But there's two other cards to do exactly the same, so it doesn't matter too much because I actually think the Abyss Actor monsters by itself are actually quite neat. But that's only the pendulum effect. Also, it's a scale 0, which you can do some shenanigans with, but I'll talk about that a little bit later when it's about extras. But the monster effect, if the monster that you control is destroyed by battle, like Abyss Actor monster, you can special summon the card from the hand. And if you activate an Abyss script while this card is on the field, you can special summon one level 4 or lower Abyss Actor monster from your deck, which is very neat because it's 4 or lower, so you can basically get the main monsters of the deck. You can even get comedic relief, so you have them on the field and could switch them to your opponent if you have another one in your pendulum scale, which you could have searched with a Madonna you had in the zone before or whatever. You have a lot of searches in the deck, so that is totally easy. So you then can get your engine rolling, and I really like that. Plus the monster being destroyed by battle effect, there is a slight minimal combo that you could have when it that could come up with, so that is kind of neat. Next up, triple comedic relief, because he is basically the new playmaker of the deck, kind of, because it's the card that will most likely probably get your set Abyss Crypts destroyed. Mainly I run it at 3 because it's kind of a neat thing if you have them in hand and on the field, so you can put them in the scale, switch monster, which is basically better than the spell card because I think you can't choose the monster that your opponent gives you, so that's pretty neat. And if you switch him to your opponent, then you can instantly trigger his effect and destroy one set spell card that you have, or set spell or trap card, which you then would go for the Abyss script because, well, why wouldn't you? But basically I think you have to even destroy the Abyss script, so that's not a problem. And then you get the effects of like either a lot of draws, or you can swarm your field and so on. So I really like that. Plus, while you switch, the card destroys itself in the pendulum zone, so you will have a pendulum monster in your extra deck, so the effects trigger. So that basically works any turn. That's why I run the ratios of the Abyss scripts like that. And you really want to see both in hand, then you actually have quite a chance to get a lot of advantage of in the first turn even. Now to the superstar of the deck, Abyss Actor Superstar. Wow. It's very important in this deck at the moment because you got new level 7 with Mellow Madonna, so now you have 2 level 7s, which in the deck would be then 6, so you can actually go into some rank 7 sometimes, which with Absolute Order's Absolute Dragon, getting Vortex Dragon out can be quite neat. Also, setting Abyss script from your deck to the field is kind of very, very neat in that situation, because now you can even do stuff with it being set. Usually it would have been destroyed in the end phase without triggering its effect, but if you have the double comic relief in your hand, then you actually can do combos with that effect as well. If not, it's just a very good searcher for the Rise of the Abyss King, plus it's level 7, so your opponent can't respond to that. And if anything, you could even recreate life points with the opening ceremony. So the card itself is very, very good, and I would definitely run it at 3 in the deck. One of the playmakers of the past Abyss Actor deck, Wild Hope, I will still run him at 3 because he's a very good target for Electromite, and you could bump up the scale to 9, which makes the potential every other scale into a high scale, so you don't have to run as many high scales as you would have to in other pendulum decks. Otherwise, getting a surge off, you can even just sometimes spam out the card from your hand, just let it sit there. Your opponent has to get rid of it at one point. If he destroys it in any kind of way, then you get a surge off, and are prepared for the next turn. He's another card that kind of limits you to just summoning Abyss Actors if you use the scale rising effect, which you don't really have to these days as much as before, but if you do, then you're kind of limited. But yet again, I actually think the Abyss Actors are amazing by itself, and you don't need the extra deck too much, so I think the effect is totally fine, and getting it popped with Electromite and going into a lot of searches at that point is very important too. I also run 3 Sassy Rookie, not necessarily because of the scale, even though a scale 2 is quite neat in the deck, which most of them are as well anyway, but also because of the simple fact that he can protect you from cards like Torrential Tribute, Raigeki, Dark Hole if you have him in your Pendulum scale, and if you want to mainly establish a field with just Abyss Actors, then he can actually put in quite some protection. If he is destroyed in the Pendulum zone, then you can pop a level 4 lower monster, I think, which only comes in handy against decks like, let's say, Altergeist, because they actually have those kind of monsters constantly on the field. But otherwise, it's a quite good stall card, cannot be destroyed once per turn, and if it's been destroyed, then you can, it floats into like another Abyss Actor level 4 lower from your deck, which can be quite neat too. So you can even, like, if you pop it with a Abyss Script, Rise of the Abyss King, and then ram it into your opponent, you could even get out Comic Relief as well if you need him on the field to swap him out or something. So that is a possible choice that you can make as well. So all in all, I really like the card as a protection and a searcher. Obviously, everybody of you knows Curtain Raiser because he has been used as a fodder for Electromite quite in basically every Pendulum deck. You definitely want to run him here. Also because it's an out to Nighturiya Beast, which you kind of need if you're playing a Pendulum deck. So that is really neat to actually have. Also, it's kind of important that you get into Electromite. Like, you don't really need Electromite, but that's the card that you want to use to make Electromite. Plus, the monster effect actually works in the deck as well. It's not the best effect, but you can use it sometimes to your advantage. I'm not saying it's happening a lot, but it still makes a pretty solid 3-off in the deck. At another level 4, a little bit of an unpopular choice amongst like Abyss Actor players, because it's not really like, you don't really need another low scale and the effect is not really amazing, but I feel like with the new support, Leading Lady actually comes in quite handy, even if it's just you normal summon her, crash into your opponent's monster, and then can set a Abyss Crypt from your deck. Plus, if you have Mellow Madonna in your hand while that happens, your monster gets set up in battle, you get Mellow Madonna out, and if you get your Abyss Crypt into the graveyard, then you would have another out for Nighturiya Beast as well from the attack points, which would work pretty well. So that's kind of important playing a Pendulum deck. That's why I like running Leading Lady at 2. Also, sometimes against cards that are too high of attack and cannot be targeted, being able to reduce its attack points is kind of neat too. So the Pendulum scale effect is kind of nice sometimes as well, but mainly you just want to either crash it into things or just have it like as Electromite fodder if you normal summon it, or whatsoever. Since you can search it, 2 is definitely enough. Triple Abyss Actor extras, took me about 15 times to say that one, but now we're at it. It's actually a pretty good card. If you use its effect though to search a scale, you cannot summon other monsters but Abyss Actors, which is mainly irrelevant as well. But also what you can do, you could use it as a tribute fodder or like a fodder for Electromite, because you can summon it if your opponent controls a monster, which comes in handy because you kind of want to go second with the deck, so you actually can utilize that effect as well. So that works pretty well with Electromite, and at that point, if you didn't tribute it, you can still summon Electromite because the other effect doesn't trigger. What also is good, you could summon it out with Pendulum Summoner if it's in the extra deck, with the Mellow if you put the Mellow as a scale, and if you have the Comedic Relief as the 8 scale, then you could Pendulum Summon the extras out, then swap one of your monsters out to with the opponent, then the scale destroys itself as a Comedic Relief, and then you can actually surge this thing as well, like the scale with attributing extras. So that is quite a neat combo that you can do. It's not a combo that comes up a lot, but it's a combo, it's like the small things with the deck that you can do now that new cards actually support the deck, because that's the only use you actually have with Mellow Bean scale 0. That's how you can somewhat utilize on that one. I run one trendy understudy. The card is definitely not as useful anymore as it has been before so far. That's the card I kind of cut together with Evil Heal, because you don't have that much Evil Heal anymore. You don't need as much trendy understudy, plus the new 8 scale has been added to the game, so you don't need him as a high scale as well anymore, since you can still search him and it helps you to recover extras, maybe other than Pendulum Summon it out with Mellow Madonna. You actually sometimes could need the card, but in general it's not as good, and if you want to swap it out with something else, then that would be the card to cut. But I kind of like it to recover, for example, the Evil Heal or extras, so at 1 I felt the card was still necessary in the deck. Another card that I cut pretty much from what I did before is Evil Heal. It's actually not that necessary. He's a 1 scale, because you don't ever need that really much. You don't really need to lower your opponent's attack points monster, because it still targets and you have better removal than just lowering the attack points. Also, it's level 8, so it's very hard to summon because you have a lot of 8 scales and you don't go into Wild Hope that much anymore as a scale to bump it up to a 9 scale, so you actually don't use it that much anymore. You could still search it and it's still a good beat stick if you get it out. Plus you can recycle, helps you recycle like one of your Abyss scripts from the graveyard if you destroy a monster by battle, which it mainly will because of its high attack point value and lowering the points of a monster when you summon it. But I always felt like it's more of a tech choice that you can search out of the deck if you really need it, rather than actually playing around it like I did before, so that's why it's cut down to 1. Coming to the Abyss scripts and the spell card part, obviously triple Rise of the Abyss King, because it's just the best kind of Abyss script active effect that you have. You can just target as many cards as you have attack positioned Abyss actor thing with different name on your field, and then, but it has to be open cards, so you can't target set cards. So we have some problems in the Autogeist matchup, for example. But otherwise, it actually is really good because you get rid of permanent cards, field spell cards. You could even pop your own cards to get searches off and so on. And if you have a monster that's level 7 or level 8, you cannot, like your opponent cannot respond to it. So that is very, very, very good, because that leads to like getting rid of things that otherwise your opponent could change stuff into, but like that he cannot. And since you can search it with Wild Hope, that actually happens quite a lot, so that is basically integrated already, and I really love the card for that, and that's why it's a triple. If it's destroyed, being able to search 2 cards helps a lot too sometimes, but there are other effects that are a little bit better, but all in all it is the best of the Abyss scripts in my opinion. I run double opening ceremony these days, not because of the life point gain effect, but because you actually have a chance that your opponent pops it with the field spell and with the comedic relief. So it is kind of neat to actually play it as a set card most of the time, and since you want to go all out kind of with the deck Pendulum Summon a lot, then your hand will be quite empty because the other cards you would set then, and then you can actually draw up to a lot of cards without really any drawback basically. So I actually like playing the card at least at 2. Sometimes gaining life points can be quite neat as well, playing against Trickstars for example, actually making sure you survive certain turns is quite neat, so I would definitely say a 2 off, if not a 3 off. I run double Abyss-tainment because the second effect is very important, plus the first effect gets kind of important as well, since you're playing a lot more of the Abyss scripts actually, so being able to recycle them from the graveyard would be, I would say, necessary more often than it was before. Plus being able to, even in your turn with switching the comedic relief to your opponent and destroying one set card, you can flood your field during your turn, which is very, very neat if you get it off. So being able to like draw into it without searching it would be very neat at that point. And I actually really like the second effect and the first effect for consistency in the deck and spamming out monsters to the field, so that's why it's at least a 2. You can cut other cards I'll be talking about and make it a 3 if you really want to. I tried to run one Abyss Prop Wild Wagon. It's basically a hard draw because it doesn't count as Abyss script if I'm not mistaken, but the effect if your opponent would destroy it in his turn is actually very good. I'm not sure if I'll leave it in or not. It's quite a good removal effect, but getting it off is rather hard sometimes, so I don't really know what to do with this card. I actually wanted to play it right now, not for the active effect, but basically just for the set effect because it's that good. But you could always trade it out with like Abyss-tainment or another opening ceremony or even another trap card if you really feel like it. I run one of the new romantic quick spell Abyss script card, not because like its effects are necessarily that great. It kind of helps you with OTK, and since it's a quick spell you can switch one monster out with the extra deck monster, which can be quite neat to either protect cards or to get in the battle phase and extra attack down, but also because of the set effect, because if it gets destroyed, you can actually set as many Abyss Script cards from your deck as much as you want. Mainly will be 3 because you'll probably have some scales, or you don't want to block your scales, but that would be kind of nice. But I don't think the effect out of the effects is the most usable, because, well, you already have a way to search your Abyss Scripts basically. Plus, if your opponent procs it once, then I don't think he will proc the next ones that you said, plus you will know which ones it is. So it is kind of it's a neat little thing. Being able to search it helps, but I don't think it's really the best option for the deck. And to the new field spell, I run it 3 times without any terraforming. I'm saying that right now because I felt like using double terraforming was kind of neat, but if you draw into the field spell and terraforming at the same time, you kind of have a dead card in hand that you really don't need, since it's not counted as Abyss Script. Plus, I think the card is good, but it's also like, I'm not quite sure, because your opponent can easily play around it. It's not as good as the Comedic Relief, because you don't really force your opponent to do stuff, but it's just like, oh yeah, if he doesn't read the card, or if he has no other choice. But even if he has no other choice, it's better if he would just not activate any monster effects than pop my card. Plus, it's in during your opponent's turn mainly. Like, you can always activate it and like trigger some negates or something, because if they have negate monsters that negate, and then either they have to negate that card, or they cannot negate afterwards if you set the spell card, a trap card, then, because then the effect will be changed. So that's kind of good. That's when I like it. So if you're playing against decks like that, maybe put terraforming in the side deck. But as it stands right now, I think being at 3, it's fair enough, because I barely use the search effect because it's not really popping off. And if you have multiple copies of it in the hand, that's kind of what you don't want, because you can't do anything with having multiple copies other than, for example, with the Abyss Scripts, where it doesn't matter crazy much. So I actually would be fine without terraforming here. And last but not least, my basically obligatory trap setup, because I always in Abyss Actors have that set up in my mind that your opponent knows they don't want to hit set cards after like a few matches, or if they know Abyss Actors at all. So playing some trap cards that are really good if your opponent doesn't destroy them before, like battle traps, for example, like Mirror Forces. You could either play Triple Storming, is probably better, but I like Drowning as well. If it resolves, it's like the strongest Mirror Force, but it's kind of harder than Storming. But it really hurts your opponent if you get it off. Plus, you can't really do much about it unless he negates it, because it's non-targeting removal that is non-destructing as well. So I actually like playing. You could go for Solemns, for example, or whatever, but I actually like the Mirror Forces in it, because they actually can turn the game around pretty much. And at points, your opponent really doesn't want to hit your back row, or give you like shit tons of advantage. So they're kind of scared of your back row, and think you don't really play any back row. It's just this Abyss Scripts. But if you then like have Mirror Force in it, they might be like, oh, can I just attack? Do I maybe have to like play around it a little bit, even though it's not a Mirror Force the next time, because it could just be an Abyss Script. So playing with your opponent's mind in that kind of scenario, I actually like. You can always be like, oh no, that's a stupid idea, whatever, take it out. Then there's enough options where you could still run. You could like go for Pendulum Paradox, for example, because a lot of the Abyss Actors actually have the same scales, for example, to get some advantage back to your hand, and so on. But I actually like being able to totally surprise the opponent with that kind of shenanigans, and I think that's a little bit the spirit of the Abyss Actors as well. Talking about the extra deck, I won't go into everything that you can do with the extra deck. I'll just show like 3 basic cards that you can use, because otherwise it'll just be like rank 4s and rank 7s. That's mainly your playmakers, because that's the ones that you can go that much. Like Exeter Knight, for example, is very good since you're playing second as well. And cards like Baguska, maybe if you have to stall, Tornado Dragon for like matchups where you have to get rid of spell trap cards, and so on. Obviously, you can go for the rank 7 Odd Eyes Engine with the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon if you want a negate, and so on. There's a lot of stuff that you actually can do, but the main things that I want to play and that I just want to show you is obviously Electromite, because pop and Wild Hope, getting a Surge, getting a card from your extra deck, getting a draw is very important for the deck. And also what you could play is Witch Apprentice, because, well, you only have dark monsters, so that one is totally fine to play. If you want to go for a little OTK variant as well, then having all your monsters boosted by 500 in Abyss Actors actually can work out pretty strong in the end. And also what I like to use is land for linkers, because you could link away the monster that your opponent gives you. If you, for whatever reason, want to get rid of it or need your scales and have that monster from your opponent, then you could link it away if you can still summon out other monsters that are not Abyss Actors. I would have wished for an Abyss Actor link monster, but 100% sure you don't really need one because they still work without it pretty well. And that being said, I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. I hope you have maybe like some good thoughts about it, negative thoughts about it. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more budget deck profiles and so on, more card discussions maybe. I'll see what I'm doing, and I hope you have a good day.